Hi guys, it's Nicole and I am finally back with a new process video. This is going to be layout number 7 from my Creating with Collections Easter kit, which I believe I started this, I want to say like February, maybe March, and it just kind of got pushed aside after the first 6 layouts, and I started doing the 6x6 class and just kind of working through those through the summer. So before I started any new projects, I kind of wanted to revisit it, see if I could kind of reignite the creative spark around this kit and continue to work with it. So this is layout number 7. I actually ended up doing an 8th, a 9th, and I'm currently working on a 10th, and I have photos planned for number 11. So I would definitely say that the creative spark has kind of ignited, and I am enjoying the process, but I am also kind of getting frustrated with myself a little bit. Just, I think with this round of the Creating with Collections series, I didn't necessarily plan ahead quite as well as I did the first round. So it's just kind of changing up my process a little bit. Now, these photos, I had actually printed them in specific sizes with a specific sketch in mind. However, I did not like write myself a note or put the photos with the sketch to be like, hey, your plan 3 months ago was to use these photos with this sketch, and boom, move on with your life. I could not figure out which sketch I was originally planning on because I'm pretty sure I modified my photos, like the sizes. So my game plan as far as like photo arrangement was to just kind of do what I typically do, and I had shared it in my 4x6 class, which I'll talk about that again in just a minute. I've got some stuff that I kind of want to share with you guys and talk about, and hopefully I can get it done without losing my voice. So I just kind of go along with some of the principles that I talked about in my class, where I figure out where I want to put my photos and which ones I kind of start with, and then I figure out what I'm going to do with the background. So in this case, I'm not necessarily starting with a sketch, but I am falling back on things that I don't know that I would say I have a distinct personal style, but there are methods and techniques that I rely on when I'm not using a sketch and I'm doing my own thing. Now, you saw me cut apart the cloud paper, which originally I thought was going to be my favorite pattern paper because I do tend to like cloud pattern paper. However, for whatever reason, I could not make that thing work. So after cutting all those papers, I set them aside and I decided that I was just going to get a cloud stencil and some Distress Oxide ink and kind of make my own, similar to what I did in sketch number 6. And these layouts aren't going to be together in my album. I don't think. I'd have to check the dates, but either way, I don't care. It doesn't bother me to kind of reuse like the same technique. And I ended up just taking a couple like test swatches on the back of my paper and then bringing in one of the pattern papers just to kind of see which one I thought was going to work. And it turned out all 3 of them were going to work, so I just kind of needed to pull the trigger and pick one. So I went with this newer color speckled egg, and because I know that I'm going to be kind of wallpapering pattern paper along the bottom and my photos are going to be taking up a lot of the center area flush to the center like margin, I don't need to ink clouds across that whole area. So I'm just going to kind of leave that open and just kind of go up along the side. And then when I get around the area that I think the top of my photos are going to hit, that's when I'm going to go across the 12-inch span. And for whatever reason, my camera has a hard time focusing for some reason when I do stuff like this. And I'm wondering if it's the glare on the stencil. So I think next time I do this, I might have to try to just turn off my filming lights and see if that works a little bit better. So I do apologize for the like constant in and out with the focus on the camera. A lot of times I can't see that when I'm sitting and I'm looking up into the viewfinder. The other thing that I wanted to mention with this layout is I didn't originally start out thinking that I was going to have this be one of my design team projects for NicoleJones911 Designs. But I had remembered that when I was in her store picking out designs, that I had this Easter kit in mind, and that was why I had kind of picked some of the items that I had picked. So when I'm doing things like this, like the paper and the photos, the stuff that you don't really necessarily need to kind of be thinking about, you just need to be gluing them down and putting them straight. That's kind of when I am thinking about how am I going to use some of those elements that I had printed and picked out to pair with this kit. And I ended up really liking the end result, which you guys will see when we get a little bit further into the layout. As far as like I was talking about relying on techniques and things that just work for me, it's things like this. It's layering strips of paper, border punches, thin strips of like a contrasting cardstock. That's just the kind of thing that I like. Now, I didn't actually need to go all the way across this area because some of it's going to get covered up by photos. But when you're kind of in the zone, you're just in the zone. And at this point, I'm not really thinking about like conserving paper or anything like that. I'm just picking things out, using what's going to work for me. And a lot of the photos I ended up matting. And again, that goes back to personal preference, personal like techniques and things that I like to do. And a lot of times it just depends on the paper that these are going to be sitting on. So that multicolored plaid is very busy, and I felt like my photos just seemed not like they were getting lost. They just don't feel finished, I guess. And with them kind of being on that ink blended background, they were just looking a little flat in my opinion. So for me, the simple solution is to just grab some white cardstock scraps and go ahead and mat my photos. And I didn't really keep them like super lined up or anything like that. These are just kind of fun kid photos. So some of them I just tilted a tiny bit or layered over each other a tiny bit. And then I had stuck some of these paper doilies in with my kit, and these are kind of working out for me to be able to have like a base to layer embellishments on. And then I used this big tag die set that I have from Scrapbook.com to kind of make a large area for title and journaling. And I kind of just picked one that was similar to a 4x6 photo and just grabbed a pattern paper that was left over that I felt like would go good with these and just kind of die cutted that out. Now, the yellow plaid layer, I didn't use the tag die set comes with like an extra little piece to cut out like the little hole or the hole reinforcers for the top of the tags. I didn't end up doing that for that layer. And then I have this grass border from, I think it's My Favorite Things. It's really, really old. Tons of companies make very similar border dies like this. So I'll just go through and see like who has a current version. They're all very similar. Some are straight, some are curved. But to me, these are basics. These are things that I reach for a lot. And so I die cutted a layer with a green polka dot pattern paper from the Easter collection, and then just one layer of like a white cardstock behind it just to kind of give it a little bit more sturdiness for when I was gluing everything down. And then this is kind of when I start going and looking through what is left in this kit. And at this point, I still had a pretty good amount of what I would say are Easter specific themed items. I'm kind of running low on them. I'm right now at the point where I can get maybe one more Easter layout out of the stuff, and then everything else is going to need to be more like spring themed. So I guess we'll see. I'm kind of curious what I'm going to be left over with at the end, where the previous collection was like chairs and like phrases with frames, I think. I can't remember. I just remember being left with like things that weren't surprising to me that I couldn't use. So here I went ahead and typed up my journaling on some cardstock, and I'm going to go ahead and add the little piece that cuts the hole into the tag. However, I ended up doing this 3 times. I think the first time I had a typo in my journaling, so I fixed it. I cut it again, and then I ended up throwing away the second version and making a third one because I had remembered that I downloaded the pink grid paper from NicoleJones911. And so I went ahead and ran my journaling through it again on that pink journaling paper. And I ended up, it was a lot further in the process. Like I had alphabet stickers already down, and I was just very careful and was able to peel them back up, reprint my journaling, die cut it, and kind of put it back down. But I really like just kind of the added interest and texture that the grid paper gave compared to this like plain white cardstock. And my title, I'm basically just kind of combining this Happy Easter phrase sticker that was on the 12 by 12 sticker sheet, and then I'm going to use some of the tiny text, I think is what she calls them, in this teal color. Now, I plan on making a video sharing with you guys kind of how I am storing her embellishments. Now, I tried a couple different methods. I only did this version once because it took me 4 days to do this. I basically printed it out, covered the entire back with stick-it adhesive. Basically, I just had 2 sheets of stick-it adhesive laying around, so I thought, oh, I'll give it a try before I order some from scrapbook.com. And it, like I said, it took me 4 days to cut them all apart, take the backing off, and put them on this thing. And I just kind of worked on it in between stuff with virtual school. But it definitely saves time when you go to use them because they're already, like, there's already adhesive on them. So you literally just pull them up like a regular sticker sheet. I just am not 100% sold on me wanting to store them like that because it took so much time. Plus, I don't know if, how many of those like weird letters I'm going to end up using. So here, like I said, this was when I realized, okay, I really want to use that grid paper. And I was kind of impressed that I got most of those letters peeled back up. I had like 2 that just kind of stuck, but I have plenty more. So I'm going to go run it through on the grid paper. So here you can see it. And I'm going to go ahead and die cut it again. And luckily I had kind of left the pieces there with my Post-it tape and everything. And what was nice about printing it on the grid paper was when I went to line up that die, I could actually tell that the die was going to be lined up and kind of level and straight because of the grid lines on it. But it just really bumped up like the plain white tag. So, and I've since, I think I used that same grid paper on 1 or 2 more layouts in the Easter pages that I've been doing. I can't quite remember. So I'm just going to put all those stickers right back on, and I'm just kind of adding a little subtitle basically that it's just going to read Happy Easter at Grandma's. We had kind of ended our day over at their house for dinner and some more like Easter basket fun and stuff like that she had given the kids. I don't really get crazy with my titles a lot of the time. I tend to just kind of pick something that's going to work, especially with this collection. I'm trying to not leave myself with all these phrase stickers at the end, so I'm kind of trying to use them and come up with titles that will work. And then I remembered that I had printed these pink labels, and these were perfect to just kind of put behind and layer with everything else that I had going on. So I just picked a couple of those to add to my cluster areas. And they just kind of helped beef them up. They helped bring in some of that pink color. And then I just kind of added some more of like the small stickers from the sheet. I think at this point I'm like completely out of that kind of thing. And then I went over to my die cuts and was kind of looking around to see what was left over as far as like Easter icons. And I found that I still have this cute little bunny head. So I'm going to go ahead and include him on my tag. And I do like to do things like that. I kind of like having my title, my journaling, and one of my clusters kind of all living together. To me, it just makes it easier. And I like the way that it looks. So again, just kind of leaning into things that work for me and things that I know that I like doing. And then at this point, the only thing that I really had left to do was to just go ahead and add the date to my layout. I do try to remember to do it at this point in my process so that I don't have to go back and look at the information later when I'm putting layouts away. Although here, clearly I still wasn't convinced on the date that I had written down. So I went and checked Facebook just to verify. A lot of times I just am like, there's no way it was this year. Like one of my kids looks too young or one of them looks too old or something, but no, I had written it down right. So I just grabbed a pink ink and went ahead and added the date on that tag as well. And then I'm just kind of making sure that I'm checking things off of that list to remind myself, basically, don't scrap these photos again. So with that, the layout is done. Here's some detail photos, and I will be back in a couple of days with layout number 8 because I think I'm just going to kind of try to work through all of these before I move on to another project. So with that, I'll catch you guys later.